Hello and welcome to the Federal Special Edition. I am S. Srinivasan. On December 6, 1992, the Babri Masjid was razed to the ground, marking a new chapter in India's contemporary political history. The event was an epoch as far as the rise of right-wing politics in India is concerned. The BJP, the political arm of the right-wing ideology, has since been on a steady rise. K.R. Narayanan, who was then the vice president and later became president in 1997, had said that the demolition of the 16th century mosque was the greatest political tragedy in India after Mahatma Gandhi's assassination. Keval Verma, a veteran journalist, in a commentary that was published on December 7, the 7th edition of the Telegraph newspaper, remarked that Gandhi assassinated again. Though the event is 30 years old, it continues to evoke strong emotions even today. Since the events of December 6, a lot of water has flown through the Saryu River that overlooks the Ram temple that's coming up rapidly. The entire sequence of events that led to the demolition of the mosque happened under the wide media glaze. The newsrooms in Lucknow and Delhi those days were palpable with tension, while local, national, and international media covered the event from the spot. It was closely being monitored in Delhi, as it was clear that the fallout would have long-term implications for India, its society, its minorities, and its politics as a whole. To discuss and recall the events of the day, I'm joined by two senior journalists, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay and Sajida Momin. While Sajida was on the spot covering the event in Ayodhya for the Telegraph newspaper on that fateful day, Nilanjan, who had been tracking the Ram Janmabhoomi movement over several years, was monitoring the event from Delhi. Following the final Supreme Court verdict on November 9, 2019, Nilanjan authored a book titled The Demolition and the Verdict, and he explored how the Ayodhya project had reconfigured India. I thank Nilanjan and Sajida for agreeing to be part of this program. Welcome to the Federal, Nilanjan. Welcome, Sajida.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be with you.
Now, Ram Janmabhoomi agitation propelled the BJP from being a marginal political party into becoming a dominant political force today, with politics over Ram Temple playing a major role. Before we discuss the politics of the movement, I would like to go over to Sajida and ask her, can you tell us what exactly happened on that day? It would be nice if you could take us through the day's events.
Okay. There had been an announcement by the BJP and the VHP, effectively, that they were going to perform a symbolic car seva on the 6th of December, 1992, and it would not in any way endanger the monument at all, the structure at all. So all the world's media had descended on Ayodhya. We arrived there. We were told that the symbolic car seva would be taking place at around 11 o'clock. So, but because there was a lot of security, there was 3-tier security in front of the mosque, because in order to protect the mosque. And then there was also rapid action force, etc., had been placed there in Faizabad, about 4 or 5 kilometers away from Ayodhya. And we were told that we have to be there by 6 o'clock in the morning. When we reached there at 6, from 6 to 11, there was complete silence, in the sense that there was no action, nothing was happening. Bhajans were being played. A site had been organized for the car seva away from the Babri Masjid, but within what was then called the 2.77 acres of disputed land, which was just outside the Babri Masjid, the walls of the mosque. And all the leaders of the BJP and VHP were present, separate, like a podium, but a very high podium. It was maybe about 40, 50 feet above the ground, was created for the stand for the VHP and the BJP leaders to sit there and watch the car seva taking place. Of course, there were lakhs of car sevaks who had come from all over the country. In Ayodhya itself, Ayodhya is a very small town. It's a twinned with Faizabad town, and it's a temple town with, I think, something like 4,000 odd temples in Ayodhya. And so no one was in that sense they was expecting some sort of action, but nothing very major, because the Babri Masjid was protected under the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had said that nothing is supposed to happen there. So we were all expecting that there was going to be another car seva, symbolic, there'd be bhajans, and there'd be some sort of rituals would take place. And when we arrived there, we were all taken, the journalists were all taken to a particular area, just so that there was a very good view of the car seva site, as well as the Babri Masjid. We were taken there. And security all over. So no one expected that anything could happen with so much security there. And then at about 11 o'clock, 10:30, just before the car seva was supposed to start, there was a stone throwing by the car sevaks who were surrounding the mosque, but they were on the outside. They hadn't actually penetrated the security ring. So there was stone throwing. And interestingly, the first people who were attacked by the car sevaks was not the mosque, it was the journalists who were, the cameramen and the journalists who were present there. The cameramen had their cameras broken, cameras taken away from them, and they were not being allowed to take photographs or visuals of anything that was happening. And the rest of us journalists, we were the print journalists, those who were writing, the very few television cameras in those days. We were marched out of the area that we were standing in on the ground, and we were told it was for our own safety by the car sevaks who were there, and we were taken to various vantage points. Where I was taken was there was a big temple called Kanak Bhavan right next to the disputed site. We were taken onto the roof of Kanak Bhavan. So we had absolutely, if you like, an amazing view of what was about to happen, because it was on a height. And we were told that we're not allowed to move from there. We have to stay there. And our bags were searched. If anybody had film rolls or cameras, they were taken away. We were not allowed to take out our pens and paper and write anything down. And that was really the first sign for us that something was going to happen, because this was unprecedented for us. We'd never experienced anything like that. And then suddenly from one side of the mosque, there was a barrier. There were a few hundred car sevaks had started chanting, and they started shaking the barriers, and they came into the site of the Babri Masjid. Interestingly, at that point, from that side, when they came in and they started breaking it down, from all sides, suddenly we saw thousands of car sevaks just coming in from all sides. And there were CRPF and paramilitary, which had been stationed inside the mosque, they were supposed to be there to protect it. Not a single one of them did anything. And interestingly, they all marched out. It was like all premeditated. They just suddenly marched out, moved out, and went to the side. And then for the next 4 hours, the Babri Masjid was effectively broken down. One by one, slowly, they had come with pickaxes. There were thousands and thousands of car sevaks there. They had come with pickaxes, they had come with ropes, axes, etc. And initially, when we first saw them climbing onto the dome, it was a little bit reminiscent of 1990, which we will go into later. It was a little bit reminiscent. So there was the feeling that this is just going to be another show of strength. They're going to climb up there, and then the BJP leadership who is gathered there would be asking them to come down. and everything would go back to normal, and then the car saver rituals would take place.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. And they continued to attack it. And around 3 hours after, I would say, 3 to 4 hours after, we heard explosions. And we actually watched the first dome of the mosque. The Babri Masjid is a 3-domed mosque. The first dome of the mosque come down. And it fell sort of like that. It didn't erupt like that. It went into itself. And in between, there was the BJP leadership, which was there. We had Uma Bharti, who was there, who was a very VHP leader at that time. She was raising slogans.
So, Sajida, what I'll do is I'll come to that. What was the role played by L.K. Advani, Murli Manohar Joshi, and other senior leaders? We'll come to that. But if you can quickly take us through what finally happened, at what time the mosque was completely pulled down.
Right. So, as I say, about 3 hours after at 11:50, that was when the first entry into the mosque took place by the car sevaks. When they started, they clambered up to the top of the dome, put a flag there, and then the demolition started. And this is a 400-year-old mosque, and it was dilapidated, but it wasn't a weak mosque. The building was not something that anyone expected that it is going to be able to just be pulled down by people banging at it with sticks and stones and axes, etc. But surprisingly, 3 hours later, we saw one dome came down, and then the second dome came down about an hour after that. And finally, if I remember, I think it was about 4:50 that the third dome came down. Right. And then it was just all rubble. There was completely the car sevaks were in a total frenzy of jubilation at that point in time, because they had achieved what they had wanted to do. The whole Babri Masjid was razed. And after that, we were escorted, the journalists were escorted out of the premises. We were told it is now time for you to leave.
So you're saying by 4:50, 55, the whole thing was razed to the ground.
That's right.
I have with me, Sajida, the December 7, 1992 edition of the Telegraph that carried your report. And here is what the headline said.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, if you could see, it said that Babri Shrine razed to the ground. Of course, in today's changed world, some may even civilly object to the headline. Nilanjan, and now I come to you. Since you have been tracking the event over the years, can you rewind and take us briefly through the developments and the build-up that culminated in the demolition?
See, very briefly, from the early 80s, that is the time when religion starts becoming an important factor in Indian politics, right from 1980 onward. And if I can actually put a starting point, it starts with the Moradabad riots. Thereafter, North India became essentially a sequence of one riot taking place after another. Now, it kept on happening on various issues. There was a communalization of the polity. Indira Gandhi herself in 1983 divided up the state of Jammu and Kashmir into a Hindu Jammu and a Muslim Valley region, and swept through the Jammu region. So there was a lot of religion coming into politics. At that point, the BJP and its affiliates within the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or what we now call as the Sangh Parivar, they felt that they required one emotive issue. So an emotive issue was identified sometime around 1983-84, and they actually learnt about the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid issue. It was actually an issue which was forgotten, and most people in active politics had not actually seen the installation of the idols inside a living mosque way back in December 1949. So they started an agitation, but then it so happened that on the day that they were supposed to come and petition the Prime Minister, who was Indira Gandhi at that time, just as they were leaving, they learned, she had been shot dead. So everything went into the cold storage. They started reviving, they the politics around it at sometime around 1985, but that time there was actually not much, groundswell of support they were getting on the issue of Ram Temple. What really galvanized the Ram Temple issue was actually the Shah Bano judgment. And thereafter, the protests which came with that, and finally, the Rajiv Gandhi government deciding to nullify the Supreme Court verdict on the Shah Bano case. So that was presented by the Sangh Parivar as an instance when the Indian state has gone out and appeased the Muslims. So if you appease the Muslims, so why don't you also take care of Hindu interests? So it is not really established, like actually not being able to prove it by document, but there is sufficient circumstantial evidence to say that the government of that time, that was headed by Rajiv Gandhi, they found out ways by which the Hindu claim on the Babri Masjid could actually be delivered to them. So they found a way out, and actually the local court in Faizabad in February 1986 passed an order that it should be unlocked and Hindu devotees should be allowed inside the Babri Masjid shrine, so that they could go and offer prayers to the Ramlala. That is how actually it came back into the foreground. But thereafter, again, that the Hindus had got hold of the right to go inside the Babri Masjid and pray. There were a couple of riots here and there, but it really did not pick up what is a momentum. It actually came when Sayyid Shahabuddin, who by that time had emerged as a very important Muslim leader, who was trying to actually build a constituency for himself within the Indian Muslims. He announced the call for boycotting the Republic Day on 1987. That led to a huge backlash. That provided an opportunity to the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, which is spearheading the agitation. In 1987, in fact, the BJP had not officially endorsed the demand for building a Ram temple in Ayodhya. It came as late as 1989, just few months before the Lok Sabha elections in which Rajiv Gandhi was defeated. What really electrified the Sangh Parivar Vishwa Hindu Parishad movement was the call given in 1989. It was decided in a very calibrated manner that in 1989, they decided that we are going to take out Ram Shila Yatras, specially consecrated bricks with Jai Shri Ram inscribed on it, were manufactured in brick mills, which are there all over the country, and they were to be taken in processions right up to Ayodhya. So what happened was that it converted into a mass movement, because people did not have to go to Ayodhya and participate actually to get a sense that they were participating in a mass movement. They could just step outside their home and hold their hands and obey and pay obeisance to the bricks which are going and get a sense of participation. So it really converted a mass, the agitation for a Ram temple into a mass movement. The Ramshila Yatras also provoked a large number of communal riots in various places, most infamous ones being in Bhagalpur and a few other towns in Uttar Pradesh, including Meerut, and also several places there were riots. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad had also decided to have a Shila Nyas program, which is that lay the foundation stone of the temple, and they announced the date of the 9th of November 1989, perilously close to what was expected would be the Lok Sabha election schedule. The Ram Shila, the Shilanyas program actually, which ended up, it started after the Ram Shila Yatras, which ended by about the end of August, September. So a certain amount of mobilization had been done, actually changed the entire nature of the movement. It led to the situation where no political party was able to oppose the Shilanyas. Everybody, by and large, came around that there is this huge mass momentum which has been carried. So let us not try to oppose it too much. There are very few political leaders who actually said that Shilanyas should not happen. And in fact, Rajiv Gandhi started his campaign also in a very tacit way of endorsing the Shilanyas program from Faizabad, not Ayodhya, Faizabad, and promised Ram Rajya. Despite that, he lost the election, had won barely about 200 seats. So that is how it happened. So it really became a nationwide mass movement 89 onwards. There had been After that, we had, it continued through the 1990 when there was another call given for Kar Seva, when Vishwanath Pratap Singh announced the Mandal Commission Award, and that actually worried the BJP and the Sangh Parivar leaders that because of caste fissures within Hindu society, whatever pan-Hindu unity we have been able to forge is going to be destroyed. To counter that, they took out, Advani started his Somnath to Ayodhya Yatra from the 25th of September, which happens to be Deen Dayal Upadhyay's birth anniversary. Now, this is the way actually they started connecting the Ram temple to issues which were actually beyond the temple. If you remember correctly, that after the demolition and the first press conference that Mr. Advani held after his release was over, he said that this movement, this agitation, he didn't call it an agitation, sorry, it was a movement, was not just to build a Ram temple. He said that this is essentially to propagate the idea of cultural nationalism that was being talked about at a time when very few people understood what is Sanskritik Rashtravad. No one really understands that the political lingo, which is very commonplace these days, was actually completely Greek to most people at that time, including us journalists. We had not even regularly started using the word, Sangh Parivar. Anyway, to do a quick forward, we had that incident in October 1990 when the BJP had withdrawn support from the Vishwanath Pratap Singh, VP Singh government. Mulayam Singh Yadav was the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. There was a storming of the Babri Masjid. Some Kar Sevaks actually got up on one of the domes. It destroyed parts of it, but really nothing much. And then they came down. Then 2 days later, they made another attempt to storm the Babri Masjid, at which point the police stepped in and it led to a police firing. We were there.
Hold your thought. I would like to show you. Actually, I was also on
yes,
that.
You were also there very much.
In Ayodhya, and Sajid was also there. We both covered that run-up on October 29th. This is a report which was carried in Telegraph. I was also with this.
All roads lead.
And, I would, why I'm bringing this up, because it's interesting. When we were covering this particular event, which was a build-up, which was the first major attack on the mosque. First day, as you correctly said, nothing much happened. And a day later, there was a police firing in which about officially 17 people were killed. Some of them due to police firing. And also 2 guys actually climbed on top of the mosque that day. Central Dome. Yeah. And Kothari brothers.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So the thing is, that time, Mulayam Singh had taken a very strong view, and he was promising everyone that actually he will ensure that no harm is done to the structure. And he even made a remark, Parinda bhi par nahi maar sakta, which means that alluding to the fact that nobody can approach that mosque. Now, when he was able to, there was, of course, some other events which happened subsequently. In comparison to that, why wasn't a similar security provided 2 years later? Because even that time, it was known that a lot of Kar Sevaks were pouring into the town from the neighboring places. When we were covering, we knew when we went for a round a night before, and then we realized the streets are all empty. But next morning, suddenly there was a huge crowd. I'm talking of 1990. The streets are all filled. And obviously the Kar Sevaks are all, hidden, or they were all strategically placed in villages in and around Ayodhya and Faizabad, and they all came out. So it seems pretty much a planned incident that day when we were there. But, 2 years later, do you think a similar event happened or something more than that? Because there was nothing which happened on that day. There was no violence. It was all, there was enough time for the security forces also to prepare. There's enough which had happened. But can you focus on comparing the 2 days, Sajida?
Yeah. You want me to do it, Srini?
Yeah, Sajida, and then we can speak to Nulandini.
Okay. There is, the main thing is political will. That's the most important reason why the 2 days were so dissimilar. In 1990, the political will was that nothing was going to happen and Mulayam Singh's reputation was at stake, and therefore he had made that comment, Parinda par nahi maar sakega, that much security was going to be there. In 1992, Kalyan Singh was the chief minister, the BJP was in power, and they had extended full support to the central, the VHP and the BJP who went there and demolished it. But in terms of the description of what happened, I mean, as you said, in 1990, when we went there in 1990, the streets were empty. There was nobody, and then suddenly on the day we found that all these temples and dharamshalas and everything that was there in Ayodhya and all the villages around, the car sevaks had been hiding there. And then they came out from there, and then they took out a symbolic yatra, if you like. The difference was that when in 1992, when I reached there on the 5th of December, I could not recognize the scene. I mean, I have been to Ayodhya from 89 through to 92, hundreds of times. I mean, that was my beat, and I used to spend probably more time in Ayodhya than I did in Lucknow. And the difference was phenomenal. One difference was that the amount of people, I mean, there were 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs of people in this small town. The streets were just thronging. They were not in hiding. They were there, and the demeanor was different also. The demeanor was very aggressive. It was menacing. It was angry. It was determined that something big was going to happen. In 1990, it was like they had to surreptitiously get there. And I remember, I think it was Uma Bharti or someone who shaved her head and sort of changed her looks and everything and went there because they had to get through all the security to prevent them from getting there. The other big difference that we noticed on that day was that prior to December 6, 1992, the car sevaks, the VHP, the RSS, the affiliated Bajrang Dal, etc., they would follow the press around, wanting to have their picture taken, wanting to have whatever they were saying recorded in the press, and their comments said, so that they could build up their own image, if you like. So the press was never a target. We were courted rather than targeted. In 1992, it was totally different. From December the 5th itself, I remember a news track, I think it was a video group, and their car went around.
It was a video show.
Yeah. Video shoot. That's right. They went around on the 5th of December, they went around Ayodhya for a recce to take pictures. And they came back to Faizabad, where we were all staying in Shah-e-Awad, with their windscreens broken. They had been attacked. They had been told, you can't take pictures. So there was like a different atmosphere altogether. I mean, and in terms of security, what you're saying, yes, there was a lot of security. In 1990, there was a lot of security. In fact, in 1992, there was even more security. There was a rapid action force which had been placed in a cantonment area in between Faizabad and Ayodhya. They can get from the place where they were to Ayodhya in less than 5 minutes. There were, I think, 4 battalions or something like that of the rapid action force, and various other security forces were there. But they were told when the attack on the Babri Masjid happened, the rapid action force was told by the Kalyan Singh government that you are not allowed to move. You are not allowed to go to Ayodhya. And this was told to us journalists by the battalion head after the event. Because when they were asked that, why did you not go? They were told that we were given strict orders from the top that we are not to do anything. So it was, to me, it is a matter of political will.
Right. Now I'll come to you, Nilanjan. You see, it's a matter of political will, but in the Supreme Court, there was a different promise given, both by Kalyan Singh as the chief minister, and a certain assurance was also given by the center. And I'm sure Center, as you have pointed out in the book, had a lot of intelligence, the intelligence agency had given them a lot of feedback. So if you can recount what exactly happened. Yeah.
The BJP government in Uttar Pradesh, it came to power in June 1991. The first thing which they did is that they started acquiring land outside the disputed property. 2.77 acres that Sajida referred was first acquired. Thereafter, 42 and some additional, some fraction was acquired. So obviously, these acquisitions were challenged in the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court should not be seen that Supreme Court was completely, in the clear, as far as doing something. Even the Supreme Court did not actually hear the matter in a very, with any greater amount of urgency. So the issues kept on drifting. The Narasimha Rao government knew from July 1992 onward that on the 6th of December, there is going to be a major flashpoint. If we actually go back and track down, we find that the Narasimha Rao government did very little to try to diffuse the situation, to try to restart the negotiation process which had started. Not that the negotiations would have yielded something, but probably the 6th of December event could have been pushed back. My own sense is that the assurances which were being given by the senior BJP leaders and also some RSS leaders to the government, they wanted to believe that completely, that nothing would happen to the disputed structure, that we will safeguard it. We are going to do some kind of symbolic car seva outside the mosque area, and then we are going to tell our cadre to come back. My own sense is that Narasimha Rao was a seasoned politician. He knew that something much more is going to happen because of the intelligence reports with the kind of intent which these car sevaks were gathering. So here we come to this idea which was there in a certain section of the Congress, and I am of the view that even the Prime Minister held that probably it would be nice if we allow the Vishwa Hindu Parishad to go and actually demolish the structure. It is going to be good for the country because a major flashpoint is going to disappear. The BJP, the RSS and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad would no longer have a so-called hate symbol. The Babri Masjid had actually become the hate symbol of what indignities had been perpetrated on the Hindus in history. So we remove that. So the BJP becomes an issueless party. That, I think, was a complete miscalculation, because if we go back and look at the 30 years, the demolition of the mosque was not the end of a chapter, but it was the beginning of a new one, which is still running between, at the moment, what we are seeing amongst us. We're already seeing the narratives evolving at very rapid speed on the Gyan Vapi Masjid in Varanasi, in the Shahi Idgah, in Mathura, on the Taj Mahal, in Agra, and hundreds of shrines at various places. Bodhshala is already there. There's a case pending. There's a case going on somewhere in Karnataka in the coastal region. So I think that in the next few years, we'll possibly be having much more repeats of what we saw.
So Nilanjan, just hold your thought there, which means you are trying to say that between the 2 points of view that time, which was being bandied about, one was that Narasimha Rao was actually led up the garden path. He was, lulled into some kind of complacency, saying that from promises from various quarters, saying that, look, nothing much will happen. Because if you look at Lebanon Commission's report and also the promises which were given by Kalyan Singh and his advocates in the court, it all said nothing will happen. There would be a car seva on December 6th, and nothing much is going to happen. But you seem to have no surmise that actually it was much more than that. He was not lulled into any kind of complacency that nothing much will happen.
My sense is, now this is no way that we'll ever be able to know, because I do not think that Narasimha Rao would have left any records. But I think that in the heart of, if deep in his heart, he would have known that these people are serious about what they want to do. Because mind you, that you had a major congregation in 1989. You had one in 1990. You had another mini one in the summer months of 1991 when all structures around the Babri Masjid were raised to ground and the platform came up, which was constructed there. So you could not continue to assemble lakhs of people in Ayodhya and tell them to go back without demolishing.
Yeah.
The intent at that time, I'm sure, was not to really build the temple, but demolish the Babri Masjid. It had become a symbol of hate.
Right.
Babri Masjid had to go.
Yeah.
That
So
is,
I remember my own encounter with Arjun Singh, which I met him on December 4.
In fact, I quote that report in my book. Your report of what Arjun Singh transpired in that meeting between you and him.
So he did say that anything may happen any day. Of course, that was his quote. But when I insisted, what do you mean? Then he said, how would they defend? He said they could simply say they're overwhelmed. And this is what happened. Finally, the answer of the government was that security forces are overwhelmed by the enormity of presence of car civics there. So even a man who was pushing a secular line within the Congress party knew at least 24 hours in advance that something very bad is going to happen. And even as you pointed out in your report, even the Supreme Court has underlined a particular word, egregious, something is going to happen or happened. So everybody kind of had a idea of what might happen as far as political leadership is concerned.
It's very simple that if even at 30 years ago, I was a much younger person in my early 30s. So if I had the foresight and tell my editors that, look, I do not want to go to Ayodhya because I know that the mosque will be demolished. Let's send our Lucknow correspondent and one of the ones who was slightly younger to us in the hierarchy within the paper to go there, because I know that they may not be in a position to actually write out a decent report. We require hands-on here who understands every street of Ayodhya, and I knew it also, slightly right from 86, 87 onwards. I had been going there every few months, so I knew virtually every gully, kucha of Ayodhya. So we just required somebody. That is how. So if I could have had absolutely no intelligence input, pure political logic of having covered and written about this movement, saw the intention of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and other leaders of the Sangh Parivar, how could the government not have that idea?
Right.
I think that the government was very clear that it is going to be demolished. They decided because the overarching sense was, let us take away their issue once and for all. That didn't happen because Advani was very clear that through this movement, a lot of other issues have been brought to the fore. This entire campaign about indignities in history is what is prevalent even now. You go and ask people that why did people vote for the BJP in Uttar Pradesh earlier this year and give them a majority. We are still in the middle of the Gujarat election, so we do not know the verdict. So people say that the BJP might have not done anything, but at least they have done one thing. They have actually straightened out the minorities, the Muslims specifically. Muslimanों को ठीक कर दिया.
Right.
That is the general idea.
I'll take you again to that day, because today is December 6th and we are discussing. What you're giving is a broader perspective. It gives a context to the whole thing. Next day, as a fallout, I'm taking you to the next day after 92. What happened on 6th December, on 7th December, there was a cabinet meeting. Actually, on the same day, there was a cabinet meeting. On December 6th, Union Cabinet met. And it discussed and that said, we're going to take a very strong measure, going to ban communal organization. That was one. The second is that BJP owned moral responsibility. So again, there are two headlines I'm showing you. If you see the two headlines?
Yes.
So what happened? BJP, expressed regret that day. It said they owe moral responsibility. But then was it again just a tactical one, as we understand now?
I think so, that it was a tactical gesture. Mr. Advani also made that very famous statement that it was the saddest day of my life. I really do not know. They should have, we have often said, that the BJP actually suffered for a few years, but I think that there was a deep down that they were confident that eventually they would be able to come back, but they came to power in 96 for a very brief 13-day period, but not definitely on the Ayodhya plank. Again, in 1998, Vajpayee became the prime minister, formed a coalition. It continued after the re-election in 99 till 2004. So what happened was that while outwardly Ayodhya disappeared from the political agenda of parties because the mosque was not there, but the issues which had come to the fore through the movement actually continued to gather weight and became have greater support. That's a better way to put it. And then eventually we know the kind of reactions which happened with the Gujarat 2002 riots. The election in Gujarat actually justified the riots, said that it was all in response to what had happened in Godhra.
Right.
Mr. Modi made that famous statement, "Ki kriya pratikriya ka daur chal raha hai." Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So that is what happened. So that traction gained. And so if we actually have an imaginary in your mind, plot a index of Hindutva, and on the axis, the x-axis, at the horizontal, you place the number of years, and on the vertical you put the value. So from 1989 onwards or 87 onwards, you find that it is constantly rising. After 92, it doesn't rise as rapidly for a few years, but then again it starts rising. It continues to rise slowly, but it is rising. At no point after the Babri Masjid, Ram Janmabhoomi became a part of the national political agenda sometime in early 1989 has the support for the Hindutva idea ever decreased.
Right.
I think that is the singular success of this entire movement.
Yeah. So, Sajida, how do you see the turn of events? You were there on the spot. You saw on that day how the senior leaders, Murli Manohar Joshi, Lal Krishna Advani, Uma Bharti, and there are a whole lot of others who were all there on the dais. And you heard them, what they were saying that day. Subsequently, BJP came out with his explanation. At least Advani said it was, even Vajpayee expressed some regrets. But then subsequently, the development which took place in Lucknow, was there any, as a political observer, you were a correspondent in Lucknow, after seeing the events unfold in Ayodhya, what was the kind of thing that was happening in Lucknow? What did you, of course, there was a president rule imposed, but where was it heading from there? Was there any...
No, in Lucknow, of course, as soon as the Babri Masjid was demolished, Kalyan Singh gave his resignation, and then President's rule, as you said, was applied. Just a little bit to add to what Nilanjan was saying, the whole thing vis-a-vis the BJP's agenda, even during the time of the Babri Masjid agitation, it was very clear. The slogans all said, "Teen हमको दे दीजिए वरना 3,000 देना पड़ेगा," if you remember.
Yes.
And those teen were Babri Masjid, Kashi, and Mathura. These were the three. And the intention of the BJP, the VHP, etc., the Sangh Parivar, was that if you do not give us these three, then we will take 3,000 temples, mosques, dargahs, etc. And what we're seeing playing out now is that demand for those 3,000, though they haven't got the three. On the day itself in Ayodhya, I mean, L.K. Advani, I was the only one who I did hear, and I'm sure others also heard, say to the car sevaks, "You have done what you wanted to do, now please go." And this is when they were first attacking the mosque. "Now please leave the site." But he was the only one of all the leaders who were saying that. I mean, the others were actually egging on the car sevaks from doing it, to continue with attacking the mosque. And there is the famous Uma Bharti's slogan of "Ek dhakka aur do, Babri Masjid tod do." And that is not, I mean, that was something that she repeated and again to actually get the car sevaks to continue doing what they were doing. As far as in Lucknow is concerned, as I say, Kalyan Singh, then he resigned once the deed was done. He had cleared the way for the Babri Masjid to be broken down, and then president's rule was imposed. And after that, I think we had an election subsequently to that. But the fallout was then in the rest of the country. The fallout was the riots that took place in the rest of the country. The fallout was the start of the BJP's rise using this issue. I mean, as Nilanjan very rightly said, the 2002 is a fallout of what they achieved in 1992 in Gujarat, what happened there. So, you know, it is very much the watershed moment as far as the Indian politics, but also as far as BJP's politics is concerned. They have gone from strength to strength on the basis of creating this hate. The Babri Masjid became the hate figure, the hate item. But then from that, I see it as a natural extension that Muslims became the hate figures after that. That the extension of the Babri Mosque was that it is a Muslim thing, and therefore now what we're seeing is the Muslim is now the other, the Muslim is the hate figure, it is the demonizing, it is the bearer of all evils in India is the Muslim, and that is stemmed from there. That you broke down the mosque, but after that the hate went straight into the Muslim community. I mean, I remember, I've written about this, and I remember a scene at the time that the mosque was being demolished. I was one of the very few Muslim journalists who was there. I think I was the only Muslim woman journalist who was there at the time. And I had to change my name because obviously the situation was very, very volatile. And I had a lot of protection from the fraternity. And a few of my colleagues came up to me and said to me that, how do you feel as a Muslim watching something like this happen? And some of my colleagues were very, very moved. And I think they, in a lot of senses, they were moved probably more than I was. I mean, I didn't cry or anything like that. I saw other colleagues of mine, non-Muslim colleagues of mine, who were crying. But after that, after the demolition that day, in the evening, we went on a recce around Ayodhya. And in Ayodhya, there were some Muslim residents of Ayodhya, and they had all been taken to the police station in Ayodhya. There is the local police station, and they had been taken there, and they were being given protection there. And in that room, in that police station, I saw hundreds of men, women, and children who were being protected and kept in that room because they were the car sevaks outside were in a frenzy, and they were killing whoever they could find, particularly if you happen to be a Muslim. And it reminded me of all the stories that I had heard of the Holocaust and what happened to Jewish people during Hitler's Germany. I'm sorry to say this, but that is exactly what it reminded me of. It reminded me of these people who were absolutely petrified. They did not know whether they were going to be let out of there alive, whether they were going to be killed by the police, or whether they were going to be killed by the car sevaks, because the police had also, to some extent, by just marching out of the mosque, they had not protected the mosque. And that was the time that I had tears in my eyes, because to me, that was the future of India, or should I say the future of Muslims in India.
Right.
It went, for me, that was the way I saw it. That this is now what Muslims in India now have to feel. If the BJP continues to use this ideology as their way to getting power, this is what the Muslims of India are going to face.
Right. Nilanjan, to conclude, as Sajida has put it, that there is a certain new hate symbol which they have as a extension of that from mosque to a community. Now, There are two more demands which was made. Of the three, one is met. The remaining two, Varanasi and Mathura. So where do you think this is heading? And I will take that as a concluding remark.
I definitely see that the case on Varanasi has gone quite forward. The Supreme Court has allowed this to become a full-blown legal dispute. There is also a legal dispute going on over the shrine in Mathura. I think that it is basically a matter of time before both Gyanvapi Mosque and the Shahi Eidgah in Mathura get converted into temples. I do not know the exact process. Is it going to be demolished by a mass mob frenzy, or whether the government is going to actually facilitate that, and some Muslim body is going to be found which will agree to shift the mosque, if you remember, even during the Babri Masjid, all these theories had come that even, in fact, the Rajiv Gandhi government had even tried and approached the Al-Azhar University to try to get the Muslims to agree to shift the mosque from one place to another. So we have heard these stories in the past. So there is a certain template which has happened. I do not know which of these templates is going to be used, but I think that the shrines in Varanasi and Mathura, as they exist today, are not going to be here for a very long period of time. I do not know that how many years it is going to take, but I definitely expect that there will be a repealing of the Places of Worship Act. Either it is going to be declared as being violative of the Constitution by the Supreme Court. Mind you, there's a petition pending in the Supreme Court which has been filed by a member of the BJP and its legal cell. So that is in fairly advanced stages. So I see a lot of the basic core issue of Hindutva is going to be pursued. This is not the end of, this is not a full stop on the temple mosque dispute in India. Sajeda was talking about the Muslims being targeted, I think, it's a slightly broader picture that not just the Muslim, there is a perfect template of the enemy of the nation. You have Pakistan. You have the Indian Muslim. You have then the various political parties which are against the BJP, which includes the dynastic parties, so-called, mind you, the dynastic parties are very much part of the BJP's campaign. And you have the entire spectrum of the civil society, the intelligentsia, and of course, we in the media. And finally, the Latvian elite. So it becomes a very close compact, and anybody who opposes anything to do with the BJP, even a prime ministerial visit to Morbi where a bridge collapsed, becomes an enemy of the nation. So this identification of the leader as the party as the nation, that has become the dominant sense among the people. So more and more, I think that raising a voice is going to be extremely risky in India in the times to come.
Right. Thank you, Nilanjan. Thank you, Sajida. Thanks to both of you to give a complete understanding of the issue. And thank you, Sajida, for giving a perspective which you saw that time from the ground and what you perceived the time and what has unfolded over the years. And Nilanjan for giving a deep perspective on how you see the whole thing heading towards. Thank you very much. Bye.